Hello everybody, Dark Skeleton here, and just for fun, a couple hours before Karazhan is finally announced and we see some of what's actually coming in the new expansion/adventure set, I'd like to give some quick predictions about what I think might be coming out of Karazhan as far as class cards go for the new set. So, Priest, as we all know, really sucks right now. It's really easy to just say, oh, okay, you're playing a Priest, you have like 6 entombs, whatever, I just go face and I win the game. And sadly, that works a lot of the time. Really sad for me, because Priest is arguably my favorite class, definitely in the top 3. So what I think needs to happen for Priest with this set is that they need to get some early game cards that can actually keep them in the game. That could mean something along the lines of a Zombie Chow back from the Naxxramas set, but mostly just on maintaining board control, not falling too far behind. They need to not fall too far behind, because in the current meta, tempo is basically everything. If you have too much tempo, it doesn't matter if the other player is playing control, because you just push them out of the game with consistent damage over time, and their board control or the AoEs doesn't mean much, because you can just play more minions from your hand. Like Battle Rage, for instance, you just draw 5 more minions. Therefore, yeah, like a 2-drop or a 3-drop. I mean, Dragon Priest does have the 2/4 taunt for 2 mana, and that does make it almost a playable deck, but it's not quite there, and regular Priests have nothing, really. So hopefully we'll see something like that there. With Shaman, Shaman is really strong, especially with aggro. There's the whole 4 mana 7/7 meme with a faceless, what's it called? The Flame Wreathed Summoner? Whatever, the 4 mana 7/7, even though it's not really 4 mana, it's actually 6, but hey. So Shaman does not need more aggro cards, really. Therefore, the cards that are probably going to be coming out of Karazhan that are Shaman specific, probably going to be a little bit on the weak side. I would think maybe something like a niche aggro, control card, rather. There's been an interesting deck which involves basically playing taunts and giving them the ancestral rebirth, so that they just come back as a death rattle minion, and then yeah, just taunting the hell out of your opponent as Shaman. And that's actually worked pretty well right now. I think that deck has made it to Legend. But for other types of control Shaman, it does kind of have the same problem as Priest. Like, yeah, you have the 3 mana Elemental Destruction, blow up the board, but then you're overloaded for 5, and the other player just kind of rolls over you still. So maybe there'll be some kind of niche control card for a weird type of deck, but a weird type of deck that may actually work in the future. So as far as Warriors go, it's kind of the same boat as Shaman, where they are really strong at playing tempo right now. In the Old Gods expansion, they got a lot of strong 3 and 4 drop minions, like the Bloodhoof Brave and the Ravaging Ghoul, which is awesome. I mean, Warrior needed that, kind of like Priests need early to mid game minions now. But it made Warrior, Tempo Warrior specifically, and Dragon Warrior as well, so strong that it's a dominant deck. It doesn't need any more help. So for Warriors, I'm thinking either like a hyper aggro card that kind of benefits the aggro pirates type of playstyle. Maybe that won't happen. I mean, you have to be really careful about that. Blizzard has stated, I believe, that they do not want to bring back too much face hunter type decks. But beyond that, like a weird niche synergy card, like maybe Taunt Warrior or something like that. That was almost a thing, but not quite. But maybe one extra card that is sort of in the realm of bolster could make that a thing. Control Warrior doesn't really need too much help either. I mean, Cthulhu Warrior is quite strong. So whatever cards that come out, it's probably going to be a niche synergy card or something like that. Or it's if it is a regular card, it just might make Warrior too strong. Hunters, the other class that is really good right now, especially mid-range Hunter, the double Call of the Wild. I admit I was really wrong about Call of the Wild. I thought it would be a decent card. I was complaining it costs 8 mana, but hey, it turns out when you just add Call of the Wild, everybody just moves from Face Hunter / Hybrid Hunter to mid-range Hunter, and it works really well, because how do you deal with 2 Savannah Highmanes and 2 Call of the Wilds? Anyway, since Hunter is strong just by basically playing on curve, but they have been trying to put the Death Rattle synergy, failing to do that with like Princess Huron, which is in itself a pretty strong card. Just hard to pull off. Infest, which gives your minions a death rattle, add a random card to your hand, or is it random beast, something like that. And the Forlorn Stalker, which gives all the death rattle minions in your hand +1/+1. Even with those cards, hasn't really been able to work, but it seems like Blizzard wants Death Rattle Hunter to be a thing, so maybe they'll get one new card there which can push that over the edge. For Paladins, I mean, Paladins have a lot of board clear and a ton of healing with Forbidden Healing. But one thing that they do kind of lack is a class-based taunt. So you can only push yourself up to 30 HP as a Paladin and a Priest. One of the reasons that those kind of control decks don't work as well as Warrior. So if your opponent just comes up with a 30 damage burst combo like the Raging Worgen Warrior decks, and you don't have a taunt, it doesn't matter. You have 30 HP, you just die because you didn't kill your opponent fast enough. So maybe there'd be something like a taunt-based card for Paladins. I mean, aside from Tyrion Forging, of course. Aside from that, maybe Dragon Synergy is kind of something that, you know, Blizzard has liked to play around with a bit. But hasn't really gotten there for Paladins, despite having the 5/5 for 5 mana that reduces the cost of your next dragon by 2 mana. It's just kind of too slow, right? So maybe if there was an early Dragon Synergy card, something in the realms of the Dragon Wing Technician, maybe. Or actually, when is Black Rock Mountain going out of the door? Because that's kind of relevant. I think that's next year, right? So Karazhan would be able to be played with that. So yeah, maybe Dragon Synergy. Mages are in a weird spot because they already have almost every card I could possibly imagine them needing. They have Kabbalist's Tome to get basically infinite spell value. They have Faceless Summoner to get a lot of minion value. They have early game tempo minions like Mana Worm, like Flame Waker, and the Sorcerer's Apprentice, which are all really solid. And as far as late game minions, I mean, they're not struggling too much there either. They have Archmage Antonidas, and Yogg-Saron works really well in Tempo Mage decks. So what would a Mage need at this point, considering that they can be strong at pretty much all levels of play? Like Freeze Mage is already still pretty good. Maybe a Freeze Mage-based card could be a thing. They've been kind of trying to put out these Frost cards that haven't really been useful in Freeze Mage, like the Demented Frost Caller and Shatter, which is 2 mana, destroy a frozen minion. So maybe something like that. But would you ever actually want to play a Frost deck that's not specifically a Freeze Mage deck? It's kind of hard to argue for that when the Alex Strasser combo just works so well already. So whatever comes out for Mages is probably going to be weird. They don't really need any high value cards at the moment. But if they want to add cards to the game, then add a card that isn't really going to fit right into Tempo Mage and just make it stronger, but something that's for an entirely new kind of deck, which could be Frost Mages, or actually could be Arcane Mages now that I think about it, because there's a lot of arcane magic inside of the Karazhan raid instance. It is, after all, the Tower of the Guardian, which is Medivh, who is a mage. So arcane magic, like something to synergize with arcane blasting and arcane missiles, that could be really cool. Maybe we'll see that. So Druid, slow non-board focused card. Okay, so what I was thinking here was that a Druid right now, a Druid as a class is very board-centric. I think if they fall too far behind after they ramp, like they're not able to keep up with the board, that it becomes kind of hard for them to come back, and that has historically been a thing. And Cthulhu Druid is pretty good at just putting a bunch of big dudes on the board and stalling until you get Cthulhu, and that works all well and nice. But what about, like, a way to play Druid that isn't all about controlling the board and maintaining tempo? In Goblins vs. Gnomes, they released Tree of Life, which was 9 mana, restore everything on the field, including the heroes, to full health. It was a terrible card, but the idea there was kind of you could outlast your opponent, I guess. They could add something like that, but less bad, where it's like you don't really need a board because your win condition isn't about developing like 4 mid-range minions onto the board, and that could be interesting. Could be just a heavy control card, something in the realms of Brawl. I mean, obviously you don't want to make Druid too much like a warrior, but if they're going to try to make the class move in a different direction, I think that's the way it would go. Considering that tempo, aggro, hold on. Aggro tokens, or more of tempo tokens, is already kind of a thing that, you can just play Living Roots on turn 1 and buff it up with Power of the Wild. That's already a thing, and Beast Druid is almost there as like an aggro deck as well. So yeah, something that's non-board focused is what I would be thinking. With Rogue, I think more than anything they need something to do on turn 1 and 2 that doesn't suck, like a aggro card or something like that for aggro based minion deck for rogues, because honestly, as it stands right now, no rogue really has any reason to do anything on turn 1 other than pass, and turn 2 other than equip dagger. You could argue on turn 1 you play the 1 mana discover a death rattle card, and that's okay, but almost every rogue is just turn 2 dagger, turn 3 backstab SI 7, immediately claim the board, move on from there, and develop into Gadget Sand Auctioneer. But what if they make a rogue cards for basically attacking your opponent really quick, really early on? I mean, if you kind of think of rogue as a concept, you would think that a rogue would want to strike hard and fast, like an assassin almost, right? So they don't really have that. It's more like, oh, I just sit around and then play reactively, and then once you get to turn 3, steal the board away and basically push down the 4 mana 5/4, get a coin card, the Tomb Pillager, and then Gadget Sand Auctioneer your opponent out of the game. So yeah, I think rogues need some aggro cards if it's ever going to have a reason to play anything on turn 2 or turn 1. And yes, Blizzard has tried to make that a thing multiple times in the past, like Bladed Cultist, theoretically a 1 mana 2/3, like a Zombie Child, just without the drawback, but you need to combo it, so it's not really that good. Or the Undercity, deal 1 damage as a combo card for 2 mana. A 3/2 that deals 1 damage that's targeted, theoretically pretty good, but because it requires combo, it's weird for rogues to put in their deck, and usually on turn 2 you just want to dagger up. So currently there's no reason to do anything but dagger up, and it would be interesting if they added an option for them to do something other than dagger up. Anyway, this video has gone on long enough. In a couple hours, I would say check out the Twitch stream. I believe they're going to be streaming it on twitch.tv/play Hearthstone. Or just check Hearthstone, and I'm sure they'll have a link up there when it's time. So I've been Dark Skeleton. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my future videos.